Hey, how's it going? This is Chris from Audio Discovery. Okay, so let's talk about phase and the phase relationships between multiple microphones picking up one signal. Okay. We're going to start at the very basics of phase and phase correlation and essentially just two signals that are happening or that are doing the same thing in the same time. So let me start with a really, really bad drawing. Okay, so essentially we're looking at a straight line, and here's a sine wave. Okay, so what happens is that what we're needing to do when we have more than one signal is that any collection function, whether that be a summing mixer or a mixing console or a DAW in this case, they are going to take two identical or I'm sorry, they're not taking identical. They're going to take whatever is coming at the time they're programmed to calculate, and they are going to. So if we're accepting that these are identical, so that means that they're going to end up with whatever that value is, right? So right now they're doubling that. Now, what happens if the phase is off on one of them, which means that the signal that would normally look like this at this time comes in just slightly delayed. So let's do this. We are going to delay it by whatever that is, right? So we're going to go here and ba da da da. Okay, so this is a very simplified thing. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I just can't draw. Okay, so what happens is that what we're expecting, so this would be, okay, maybe it's not 0. It's meant to be 0, but let's say this is supposed to be +1. It would be null at this point. Not a value of 0, but null, okay? Now, keep in mind that that would still equal 1 because of this value, right? Now, when they hit the next sample, whatever that might be, that was better. Okay, so let's pretend that that is 4, right? And because this is supposed to be, it's going to be having hit here because it's delayed, so that's going to be 2. So instead of, we were expecting 8, but now we're just going to get a 6. Now, as this goes further along, you're going to have, maybe it's not 2, maybe it's 1 at that point, and it's going to be 5 instead of 6. Okay, let's see how this is applied in real world. Okay, so I have a stacked set of oscillators here, and if I slide them over, the signal, if you read the meter, actually what we could do is let's add loudness meter just to give us a signal. Okay. So then when we hear that, watch the level. So now we're at 180 phase. We're all the way over around. These are perfectly mathematically opposite. And this is just degrees of not opposite, but degrees of opposition, right? So not quite opposite, not quite opposite, not opposite at all. Right? Okay. So that basically that's the basics. Now what happens when we mess it up? So let's go ahead and give it some mess. I'm leaving it there. Okay, so let's hear that. This is going to be loud, so I'm going to pull this down a little bit. Oh god, that is a mess. All right, so let's just do 28 saw. See if I can get this to 28 saw. Perfect. Okay. So this is they're supposed to null at this point because they were, or let's see, they were not nulling actually. Let's put a channel strip on track 2. Okay, so it nulls by whatever difference this adds to it. Okay, I mean, so trying to, so it is nulling a little bit. What we're doing here is that once you add a lot of complexity to the signal, there's parts of, once you get a messy sine wave, there's aspects of it. Let's go backwards. Sorry. Okay, so there's parts of it that will not quite line up. Let's do this. Let's go. Okay, so then parts of these may not line up. And going over, because it's a function that happens over time, they're not lining up at a certain frequency. So certain frequencies are being highlighted more so, they're being highlighted or what's the word, like low lighted, or being masked, right? So it's either sort of jumping out a little bit more of this frequency because of the way that it's happening, and then there's other parts of it that are just not coming through. But it's not perfect, and there's no perfect null, but it is happening at a certain frequency that it tends to be sort of high lit. Which is not a word, I just made that up. Let's look at the reading here. So I'll spare you from hearing it, but as we move things, you'll notice that frequencies get sort of masked, and other ones get right. So in all reality, the shifting of the phase will highlight certain frequencies and sort of mask other frequencies, right? So that's what this does. And what my friend was saying was that when he hit the button, it just sounded better. Okay. And he was wondering why. And so I will draw up a sort of a scenario in sort of discussing the sort of real, let's go ahead and delete these just so I don't make them sound. Okay, so let's just newify this. Okay, so one signal. Okay, let's take a guitar. Let's just make this one of these things, right? So you get your guitar, and now let's assume for a minute that the microphones are equidistant. So this means 6 meters, and that's probably a lot. Maybe let's do whatever. Okay, so we'll just keep it at 6. And here's the microphones. And the microphones are mighty, right? Okay, we're just assuming. Let's put a little body on that. That kind of looks like an 87. All right. Now what happens is that signal gets to, starts here and ends here. It gets to the finish line at the same time. If there's any delay, so let's just start with the first thing, like let's say that there is let's just say that's not 6 meters. Let's say it's let's say it's let's just say it's 6.2. That means that you're going to get that sound that's going to have just a little bit different of a finish. So it's going to end up a little bit different at the end. So then your calculation will be whatever minus how much ever that might be. You would have expected that it would have been, you know, also sort of it affects frequency just in the sense that um, what we experienced with complex audio signals. So when you hit a phase button and you see that wherever that has finished and however the signals hit, sometimes that might alleviate some of those problems that are happening because of the offset of this time. So let's add an additional reasoning for some of this complexity. Let's assume that these microphones are equidistant and you're in a room, and let's just start at just a basic room. When you make sounds, those sounds go and they hit the wall, and the wall hits back with all these sounds that come back and eventually go back into the microphone as a sound source. Not only is it hitting this microphone, but it's also hitting this microphone. So now you've got a time delay of a matter of milliseconds, right? So you have a time delay of milliseconds here. You have a time delay of milliseconds here from not only the signal from the guitar, but also the signals that are coming off of the walls. So let's simplify that a second. So you've got the signals that are coming into the microphones here. You've got the signals from the walls that are coming off into. So you've got not only this signal, you've got these signals here. And then you've got the signals that come from this hitting off of this wall. And now you've got the signals that are coming here. So the waveform is really complex at this point, right? We're not talking about just that first one. It's super complex. And then you start, once you can sort of ensure a couple of things. One is that let's talk about, yeah. When you have this, so assuming that those walls were bare, or maybe even worse, they were reflective surfaces because there's TVs and there's audio equipment and hard surfaces, then they're going to hit those with more with louder sounds than if you were to have some dampening material, right? So that dampening material and diffusion material will make those sounds a lot less. Where they get to the microphone, they're a lot more diminished, and that way the focus, and where this is what we're kind of talking about, the focus of what you're hearing is on the guitar and less on everything else. How does phase and this button here, how does that help it? Is essentially it's taking whatever happened in, particularly this microphone. It's just making sure that at some point all of that information just sounded a little bit better when I changed the phase relationship on it, right? Okay. So The best option in this case would be to just make sure that you've got dampening in a room, that you've got directional mics that are picking up only what's in front of it and it's ignoring things that are on the side. That's going to give you the best option. You've got a nice loud sound source that is in opposition to, as much of a quiet room as possible. Okay. Now, another question was raised about the plugin InPhase, and we're gonna talk about that in just a sec. Okay, so now we have the InPhase is open, and this is a tool that you can use in order to check phase alignment between two like signals. Okay, so what we have here is a recording that I did back in 2004. It's not the best, but it's what I could do. So what we're looking at right now is two audio signals that are not like in whatsoever. So if we go in and we look to see, let's zoom in a little bit more. And if we go in and we look at this time, what is the system going to calculate? So you see here we have these calculations that are just going to be so different from one another. They're really not going to have any like massive spikes or or anything like that. They just kind of are doing their own thing, and in the average they're going to sound pretty balanced. So let's hear what they sound like before we mangle them with InPhase. So I have this down here and we're going to listen. Ooh, that's loud. Okay, so InPhase has not been at all, so it's basically the same as it being bypassed. Okay, so how do you use InPhase? What I'm going to do is InPhase is on the second guitar. I'm going to take the ascend from the first guitar and put it into... So now this is ready to capture the sounds of both, but it's going to analyze the waveforms so that it can give you a sense of what's happening. You can use all of these without using the waveform, but this is just a way of being able to sort of get a sense of what's happening, and it'll let you analyze it so that you do the right thing. Okay, so check this out. Okay, so now we've got a signal. Let's go to the very beginning just to kind of illustrate what's happening. Okay, so here we've got the main source, and then we've got the side chain. So we're gonna... Okay, so we're gonna hear the main source, which is A, and then this is going to give us and allow us... Actually, we want to hear the mono mix because the mono mix is hearing the two of them together. So let's go ahead and we're going to hear the effects of what we do to our signal based on what is happening. So like if we were to look and wanted to make these two things match, like say for instance in a like a drum recording, then what we could do is we could delay delay the audio signal, or make it a little bit pull it a little bit frontward so that they can line up, and that way you've got items in alignment. Particularly, this is good with drums. Not so good with the situation that's happening now, but I'll move the delay around when we start listening. Therefore, you can kind of hear what's happening. Okay, one sec. So we're listening for, well, we need to hear both of them actually. So notice that when I'm affecting the phase relationship, obviously as I move it, you can hear that there's a difference. But then when I leave it, it doesn't really matter too much, the phase relationship of the two recordings, because they were completely independent and there's really no massive similarity to them that they're going to sort of line up. You could tell that, yeah, it'll sort of like emphasize a certain quality because we're moving it. It's kind of like if you were to take a delay and make the delay, the delay last a little bit longer, like matter of milliseconds. Yeah, you'll hear a tonal difference, but then when you set it, it's fine. There's no change. So it's just a matter of the change that sound that makes that sort of flanging sound. So, anyways, so that's how you use in phase. There's other functions to it that you can mess around with, but from the basic functionality and what it's supposed to do is essentially sort of let you align these things. If I had the same signal and I was revising that signal against itself, I was taking these two microphones, and the microphones I was having to, or I'm sorry, two signals of the same source. So a guitar is a source, and then the two microphones. Then yeah, you have to sort of like find the phase relationship between those two. And right now, yeah, obviously that's I'm not going to do that. That's just sort of explaining this plugin, and as simply as possible because you can sort of really go in deep and understand what you need to do in order for to sort of align as needed for two different signals. So have at it. Hopefully this was helpful, and if not, leave some comments and let me know where I went astray, and I could help. Maybe bring some other conversations into the mix that can help with some of the phase conversations. Okay, talk to you soon.